Today we will look at two of the best chronographs you can buy today and the Daytona. The Omega Speedmaster, the Rolex Daytona and the Breitling Navitimer are three of the best chronographs from three amazing brands. So first off we will look at the look, so the design and also the wearability of it. Then we will look at the history and the movements equipped in these chronographs. And in the last segment I will summarize everything and maybe help you find out which one would be best for you. Without further ado, let's get into it. For me, the design and how a watch wears is the most important thing when I choose a watch. Because what's the point if you don't like the look or if the watch doesn't wear well on your wrist? These three watches are a perfect example of brands continuously refining a design while not completely changing it. These three model names first appeared in the 50s and 60s, and since then the brands have really worked on perfecting the design. And I think that shows the most on the Daytona and the Speedmaster. Though this is not really fair, as I think the Navitimer is much more of an instrument or a tool watch than the Speedmaster and the Daytona. Beyond simply time stopping and maybe speed calculations with a tachymeter, the Navitimer is basically a calculator if you know how to use it. This was really a revolutionary tool for pilots, as you could calculate speed, you could calculate fuel consumption, ascension rate, and you can even do unit conversions. So the Navitimer has to trade some of this sleekness of design or purity of the dial with its capabilities. And in the newest Navitimer, they did purify the dial a little bit by omitting the tachymeter scale. Which is why I like this Navitimer much more than all the previous ones. For me personally, the dials always were quite cluttered, but of course this is not a design flaw, this is a necessity for such an instrument. But this look has defined an entire style of watch. And if you like pilots' watches, well, this one basically invented it. By the way, leave a comment down below what you think of Breitling's new direction. I think they have done great things in the past few months and I'm really looking forward to what we see next. When you hold these three watches in your hand, the Daytona has just incredibly beautiful proportions. You know, it just looks right. The lug-to-lug width, the diameter, the lug tip to lug tip space, the thickness, everything works together and is very, very harmonious in the Daytona. Some might not like the dial, some might hate the 5 or 6 lines of text on Rolex Daytona dials. Helping the proportions is also that this is the thinnest of these three watches, which is quite surprising as we have a manual wind chronograph in the Speedmaster. The Speedmaster has seen improvements in its proportions and wearability in the new release of 2021. Its lug-to-lug width has come down a little and the bracelet allows for nicer wearability. Also, they redesigned the dial slightly to make it more three-dimensional. It is a large watch in 42mm, but I think it doesn't wear like this. So if you enjoy wrist presence but a watch that still fits your wrist, then the Speedmaster is a great option. When we talk about the case, I think the Speedmaster case is the most interesting and the most beautiful. I always loved the design of the lugs, where you can see the flanks of the case kind of flow into both of the lugs. Of course, this is the most subjective part of this video, so leave your suggestions down below. Which one do you think looks the best? And because looks and wearability are so subjective, I think it's amazing that Breitling offers so many different sizes, case materials and dial configurations. You can get the Navitimer in 3 different sizes, 41, 43 and 46mm. I think it is easier to find the best fit with the Breitling. The Daytona as well comes in many different case and dial combinations. In this department the Speedmaster is clearly lacking, but of course you have a host of special editions if you want a variation. As the Moonwatch only comes in Hasselite with a closed case back or Sapphire with an open case back. And since a few years they also offer them in rose gold and white gold. The rose gold variant also comes with this beautiful dark green dial. Now let's talk about history and movement. Each one of these three is a great choice for your next watch. But there's a few differences which you might want to pay attention to when you want to choose one of these three. The first one of these three came out in 1954 with the Breitling Navitimer. It was equipped with a Watchour 72. Then in 57 we got the Speedmaster using a Lemania-based 3-2-1 movement. And last but not least, we have Rolex teaming up with the race circuit Daytona as their official timekeeper in 1962. And 1 year later, the 6239 came out, and this was called the Daytona, but we only see the wording Daytona on the dial from the 6241 onwards. With that being said, the Speedmaster movement has the most heritage, if you will, as the Speedmaster is still using the Lemania base. Staying with the Speedmaster, its movement also has the most certifications, attesting to its accuracy and durability. On top of a COSC chronometer certification, we have a METAS master chronometer certification, which also tests things like anti-magnetism and power reserve, of course, along with accuracy. But the Speedmaster is a manual wind movement with the lowest power reserve of 50 hours. It also doesn't have a column wheel and it has a lateral clutch. More on that later. The Daytona is one of the best chronographs of its type with a great power reserve and the highest water resistance rating of these three. But as always with Rolex, this is the only one of the three which you can't equip with an open case back. Breitling put a new movement in their new Navitimer, the B01. Just like the Daytona, the Breitling has a column wheel and a vertical clutch chronograph design. When evaluating chronograph movements, there's usually two things you want to have a look at. First, if the watch has a column wheel or a cam actuated chronograph. And second, if it has a lateral or a vertical clutch. Basically, the column wheel is only responsible for the chronograph actuation feeling. It gives a more crisp actuation and was traditionally seen in more higher grade chronographs. A vertical clutch, as in the Breitling and the Daytona, is an evolution over the lateral clutch. And it has two significant improvements, one being that you can let the chronograph run full time without additional wear and tear. And when you actuate it, it immediately starts going without this little jump that you might see sometimes in lateral clutch movements. So let's try to summarize all these facts and try to find out which one of these three chronographs would be the best choice for you. Surprisingly to me, the Omega Speedmaster is the cheapest watch of the slot. You can get the Omega Speedmaster for 8,000 euros. Potentially due to the use of a manual wind movement, due to the use of Hasselite as a crystal, and due to the lack of a column wheel. But of course, this watch goes to the most testing with the METAS and COSC certification. And I also think of these three watches, the Speedmaster has the most rich history with a very broad appeal to the general public, because we are talking about space travel, of course. The Navitimer is the clear choice if you like aviation watches, if you are a pilot or just an enthusiast. It also equips a see-through case back showing the gorgeous new B01 movement. And I think Breitling has really stepped up their game recently and the movement really looks stunning. It also has a beautifully designed clasp with its classic diagonal style Navitimer bracelet, which I have to say is a favorite of mine. I wanted to mention here that I think it's quite interesting how Breitling is currently pricing their products. You can get the Breitling Navitimer for under 9,000 euros, ranging from 8,750 to 8,950. I think they are trying to situate themselves in the same level as Omega. And while Breitling has a great history and is a very popular brand, I think it would be better if they would situate their watches, at least price-wise, between Omega and Tudor. This is even more so the case for their other releases, for example their Super Ocean. The Rolex Daytona is simply an industry legend with unmatched beauty in its case proportions. With its thin in-house movement, it sets the benchmark for sports chronographs. With that, it is of course the most expensive of these three by quite a bit. The Rolex Daytona is almost 2 times as expensive as its counterparts, with its price being over 14,000 euros. And on top of that, basically impossible to get a new Daytona from an AD. The brands, and in this case the specific models, come with their entire history and feeling, be it aviation, racing, or space travel. Choose the watch that fits you the best. Choose the watch that you like the look of the most. There's no wrong answers with these three. So guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you stuck around until this point, then thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then subscribe to our channel. Check out our other videos. We have quite a few there. And then see you next time. Ciao.